I would like to thank Ma'am Maria for inviting me to take part in this poetry event. The poem that I am going to read is from my book of poems called Dear Susanna, and the title is They Just Did Not Let Me Move an Inch. They just did not let me move an inch, as in move on, go further, go ahead, rise, shine. Shine is possibly too much to ask of them. Their establishment, which checked people in ways worse than strip search, prevented them from getting to the offices they worked so hard for. Instead, they came out of their offices and followed them in the streets in the name of being nice. They wrecked people's lives, and having done that, they just didn't let me move on. Move an inch from the rubble of my life, from the disaster, and they did so primarily with the aid of resembling faces, literally faces resembling people from everyday life. Past and present, beginning with my boss, somebody resembling him descended the steps right after I came to the library and searched for his book. I had also just come to the country and extremely enthusiastically looked for his book. I'm not making this up. I am not making this up. Somebody resembling him descending the steps, gave me the creeps. They had been descending in person earlier. Back in the university of that hometown where I sat and read by the window and shifted between the graduate lounge, the room without the window, and the chairs by the window, and especially shifted when people talked, and it was a totally normal thing to do. People talked and people shifted, but that's when the descending began. It began in a very political sort of a way by two eminent teachers. They made it look like they were talking against me. And indeed, that triggered it back in that hometown where I was going to live forever. Where I was hell-bent on doing everything right, as in really read, and I loved reading the books. And of course, I had heard of academic politics but could not imagine anything like this. I was actually pulled into an identity politics of Rwandan magnitude. Something unfamiliar came from the tradition of speaking the Romance languages and was asked to stand up for an order which was stately, totalitarian, and I refused. I was young, I was foolish, I rebelled, I was punished, I was wrecked and brought back, and since then they have been teaching me to stop speaking in any of the Romance languages. It has chopped my vocabulary and makes me look for words for hours, and recently somebody has alleged that I stammer, and I want to challenge it. Technically speaking, in a court of law, and giving a class talk should not be the answer, especially as they hold my papers, for I just cannot critique it. All of the white oppression, all white history, all history of colonialism, and I looked harder for polite words. But the descending game, oh, I do not like, for it was played by professors while I was having an affair with one, pulled into it. I did not know it would blow out of proportion, and parallelly began the game of descending, critiquing with a violence and a vengeance unknown, and there always was knocking. The politics of work assessment, the great politics of written literature, opposed to just great lecture, and of course viewed it all. They talked about having attended job talks as an outsider to this all. I was, it seemed, not entitled to this all, and looking for a book to begin with seemed like the nicest thing to do, but the descending seemed eerie, and eerie seemed very eerie. And Erie seemed very eerie after the havoc, but this was not the only case of a resembling face. That said a lot. There were many, and each told a very long story. Thank you.